Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Dr. Jairam, Dr. Paturi, Makarand, Gangadhar. I'm very happy to be with all of you, from the dignitaries on the dais to all of you wonderful people, sadhaks who have come here today. I have been given a very vast topic, the Vedic origins of yoga. It is something I have studied in some degree, and we are going to take a slightly different view, although I will begin a little bit with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. But put it very simply, Veda is the knowledge, the higher Vidya, Atma Vidya. Yoga is its practice. It's that simple. Whatever way, method, practice we use to approach Atma, Ishvara, Purusha is a kind of yoga. Bhakti yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, Karma yoga, Nada yoga, Prana yoga, Laya yoga. So many types of yoga. So yoga and Veda always go together. The Vedic rishis were great Maha-yogis, and they had all that deeper knowledge of consciousness, prana, everything. Now, to look at the Yoga Sutras in this context, often we miss the most obvious. Who is Adi Guru of yoga in Yoga Sutras is Ishvara. What is his indicator? Vachaka is pranava, Om. Yoga is taught by Om. What is the manifestation of Om or pranava in its full extension? Vedas. Vedas. So the point I would make is that the origin of yoga and the connection of yoga and Vedas is mantra yoga, which is Om, which is pranava, which is all the mantras, all the stotras, the suktas, the bijas, the divine names, all of that. So in other words, Vedas and yoga have the same origin. Vedas are the manifestation of Om. Yoga is the practice, the teachings that go along with it. And here we can then look into the lineages of yoga. And often people miss this. Patanjali is not the origin of any of the lineages of yoga. It is Hiranya Garbha. The Hiranya Garbha lineage goes through Vasishta, Parashara, etc. Ultimately, Patanjali is part of that. He comes in a middle period of yoga as a compiler organizing the teachings, but the teachings have been there for a long time. Now let us look at the Hiranya Garbha tradition. It is extensively referenced in Mahabharata, many verses to that. Hiranya Garbha is also a deity in Vedas, connected to Ishvara. Hiranya Garbha in yogic thought is the collective subtle body, subtle being, which is the counterpart of Ishvara. So essentially Ishvara and Hiranya Garbha are not really different in that particular sense. So that Hiranya Garbha tradition is what is lauded in Mahabharata, and it is lauded through the Vedic mantras. That is how it is said to be. Now, we've all studied Bhagavad Gita, and the Gita also has a lineage of yoga, from Krishna to Vivaswan, to Manu, to Ikshvaku. Who is Manu? Manu is also founder of the Vedic teachings and the original Vedic lawgiver. And Vivaswan is essentially Hiranyagarbha. It is the same solar deity. A lot of the yoga tradition and yoga teachings come through the sun. Surya. But who is Surya? Surya is Aditya, Purusha, Param Atma. So that lineage is also there. Then the third basic lineage we have is the Shaivite Yoga. The Nath yogis are part of that later. Earlier you had the Pashupata yogis, Pashupati as Rudra. And in Vedas you have Rudra. Rudra is also Om, Pranava, primordial sound. So the Rudra yogas, those are more the origin of the Nath yogis, the Hatha yogis. And in the Vedas, the supreme principle is often prana. So that prana tradition of yoga, Indra is prana. Indra is also pranava. Indra is also omkara. So we have those same lineages of the Hiranya Garbha kind of Brahma, cosmic mind tradition, the Vishnu, Krishna, Narayana tradition, and the Shiva, Rudra tradition, but they're all connected together. So in other words, the lineages of yoga are all purely Vedic and connected to that. Now, if we look at the, could I have a glass of water here? If we look at the Yoga Sutras, it is also very interesting to note what is the definition of yoga. Yoga is defined as samadhi, chitta, vritti, nirodha, definition of samadhi. Yoga is samadhi. Samadhi is not simply the goal of yoga. Samadhi is the means of the higher yoga, which is why we have so much emphasis on the sanyama and all these related practices later on, or the emphasis of samadhi. The Yoga Sutras begins with the samadhi pada. But samadhi, as the nirodha, which is essentially neti, negation of the mind, negation of the thought processes, leads to the realization of Atma, Purusha, the Drashta, or the seer. These two kind of go together as the positive and the negative. What do Vedas say? Purusha Vedam Sarvam. Upanishads all about Purusha, Atma. As we say, for example, Yogananda, yoga as self-realization. So that's all going back to the Vedic thought and to the Vedic teachings. So yoga as Om, yoga as Purusha, yoga as Atma, yoga as Ishvara. I have a great respect for Buddhism. I'm not trying to criticize them here, but to put in the context of the teachings, there is no Ishvara in Buddhism. Buddhism does not have this idea of creator, preserver, dissolver of the universe, Ishvara. It's not a theistic system as we know. Goal of yoga is realization of Atma or Purusha. We could identify this with the bodhicitta if we want to make correlations with Buddhism. But the idea that Buddhist yoga came first is like saying somebody invented the anatma, and then the atma had to be invented to counter it. Or as we say, first the idea of a non-cow was created, and then somebody had to invent a cow to counter that. So in other words, the most obvious factors of this teaching and tradition are Vedic. And even when we go into the more specific pranic traditions, as we say, Indra is prana, Shiva is prana, prana Purusha is there in Upanishads. Prana continues in deep sleep while the mind goes into abeyance. So the Shaivite Yoga is on this Maha Prana. So those pranic traditions are also there. Now, the debate is, of course, relative to the asana traditions, but they've missed out the most simple things, as Vijay Lakshmi knows. Pretty much all these asanas and vinyasanas are inherent in the Indian dance. They didn't need to be given to Indian. British did not give India Indian dance. They're also inherent in the martial arts traditions. In fact, a lot of the Hatha Yoga is a martial arts tradition, and it was connected to the Akadas, it was connected to, Kalari, it was connected to the Dhanurveda, and the Hatha Yoga is connected to Vishwamitra, as the Dhanur Yoga is connected to Vishwamitra. We also have the use of all these mudras and postures in the yogic teachings. And we also have this overall connection of Shiva as the Lord of the asanas, asanas named after rishis, asanas named after animals. And the point we also need to understand is most of the Western scholarship about Vedas and yoga is examining the less than 1% of the literature that's available to them, and often without any knowledge of Sanskrit. So we see a total integral tradition if we put all these different factors together. Now, a lot of the modern revival of Hinduism was also back to the Vedas. We saw this with the Swami Dayananda of the Arya Samaj. And there have been some very great modern yoga masters who have also connected to the Vedas. There's, of course, Sri Aurobindo, his Secret of the Vedas, his Hymns to the Mystic Fire. His disciples like Kapali Shastri, who did his Siddhanjali, or R.L. Kashyap, who is in the Bengaluru area, connecting yoga back to the Vedas. And also we have Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni, the prime disciple of Ramana Maharshi, Brahmarshi Devarat, who was his main disciple, who, by the way, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi relied upon heavily for his Vedic teachings. We also have the great Sri Anirvan and his Veda Mimamsa, Swami Vedabharati. So all these teachers have also been making this connection of Veda and yoga. And mantra yoga is language of the yoga. But if we look at even Rig Veda, it's full of bhakti. Tvam bhava is the main thing. Now, of course, you may have trouble having bhakti to Indra or Agni as Pita, Mata, Brata, Swasa, and all these things, but those orientations are there. Jnana yoga is there in the Vedas. Surya is Atma, even to sometimes Vayu is Atma, Agni is Atma. And we say prana, Indra is prana, prana yoga is also there. So my point is that there's been a continuity of yoga and Veda and Vedanta through all this time. And we shouldn't too narrowly define yoga. For example, Adi Shankara does criticize some aspects of Sankhya and even yoga. But he nowhere criticizes the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Nowhere does he take out that term yoga and have trouble with it. Many different philosophies are there, many different points of view. That is all fine. That is all part of the tradition. But there is a continuity. In fact, even what is mainly called tantric yoga goes back to Vedas. What is all this Hatha Yoga, Kundalini Yoga about? It's the rising of the Agni. The three lower chakras are the Agni Kanda. And the descent of the Soma, or the Amrit, from the three higher chakras, particularly from the Sahasrara. We talk about Agni Somatmakam Jagat. We talk about Shiva as Agni Soma, even Agni Soma, Vayu, all these forces. So the same energies are there that are being worked upon. And what is Agni? Agni is also Vak. Kundalini is also Pran. Agni is also feminine form of Agni. Shiva is also Soma. So we have these same forces also in the Tantric yogas, are the basis of Ayurveda also. Vata, Pitta, Kapha, all these different things. So it's very important to understand that there is this great continuity of the traditions, and inherently yoga is Vedic, and even asana is part of all these Vedic exercises, even the Dana Veda. Are we going to say that before the British came there was no exercise in India? The martial arts are all there. So if we look at this tradition as a whole, it is completely intact. Yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, we shouldn't separate them off. Even Yoga Sutras is Vedantic in it that it accepts the authority of the Vedas, and there's no clear philosophy behind the Yoga Sutras. It's a practical text. And all these 8 limbs of yoga are everywhere else in Vedic teachings. Yoga is said to be tapas. I won't have time to go in here much further, but yoga teaches samadhi yoga. Then it teaches the Kriya Yoga, it teaches Ashtanga Yoga, it teaches the Vibhuti Yoga, and it takes you to Kaivalya, which is the natural state of the Purusha beyond the the gunas. And I have a closing question. What is the last word in the Yoga Sutras? Does anybody know? Shakti. Shakti is Swarupa Pratishta Chitti Shakti. That's the definition of Kaivalya with which the Yoga Sutra ends. Chitti Shakti is, of course, Chit Shakti. So it is the same power of yoga all along. And use of devatas are there in Patanjali. But again, let's not narrow things to Patanjali. Yogi Yagyavalkya was also used more by the Ramanuja tradition than by, and even the Krishnamacharya background. Vasishta Samhita, and perhaps the greatest of my favorite of all the yoga texts, the Yoga Vasishta. Yoga Vasishta, which has all of Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Advaita, Vedanta, Prana, and all the rest of it. So the narrow outside mind cannot see the integrity of the tradition because it doesn't understand or study or practice the tradition overall. Yoga is a sadhana tradition. Unless someone has done sadhana, they really shouldn't be commentating upon yoga except as an intellectual exercise, which is what we have today. So with these words, I will close my talk. And my inspiration and my motivation for you is this whole Vedic yoga integral tradition must be reclaimed and connected. You can't separate. If somebody tries to be a yogi and doesn't know Sankhya or Vedanta, then they don't have the proper mind to go along with it. If somebody wants to do yogic healing and doesn't know Ayurveda, they also don't have the foundation to go along with it. Bhakti yoga goes back to Rig Veda. All these yogas go back to the rishis, rishi, yoga, Veda. All these things are one. Hari Om.